It's more that there's an implicit bias on the part of investors, right, that leads them to feel lack of confidence in the company.
Which makes sense since we were saying that women were looking into this because we're also trying to drive that and affect that change.
Right.
And so they're going, okay, part of the problem is that we are trying to affect change in this quote unquote good old boys club. But the good old boys club is freaking out because women are on boards. And as the Elvis article says, they're like, guys think women have cooties. And so they're like, oh, more girls? I don't know. And so they're fleeing temporarily. And so then it takes a while to correct.
Yep.
And they're kind of frustrating.
And they're also, they also apparently leap to the assumption that if a company has appointed women to their board and they're like promoting that means the company now has a quote, quote, social mission, which means they're less focused on, I don't know, things like profitability. Which, obviously not the case.
Right. And it's just been interesting. Like, I was glad that this popped up in my feed because I think that it is another one of those things is that it shows that it was a particular landscape that not a lot of women were in. Like, we just were not the ones that were investing funds. And so it was spiraling. It was a cyclical thing where we weren't the ones investing, so we didn't have opportunities to invest, so people didn't take us seriously when we started to invest. And it would go around because that whole industry was very, very male biased. Like, even like it's getting to the point now that they are balancing out and there are more Susie Ormans of the world, even like she was the only one for the longest time that was even like a female financial advisor.
Right.
And that still is a very male-dominated field. So finding more women who want to invest, having more women who are qualified to encourage us to invest and to teach us in a way that we're comfortable asking the questions and educating ourselves to do these kind of things so that eventually all of these things end up reaching parity.
One of the solutions, if you will, that the authors of the research offered up, and I can't decide if I agree with this or not, is so a lot of these companies, they name a woman, for example, to a board position. And so then the company does some publicity and they talk about the fact that, hey, we now have a woman serving on the board. But what the authors of the research are saying is maybe don't promote it that way. Talk about we've added somebody who has incredible expertise, who brings this strength to the board versus focusing purely on the gender piece. So,
right. And
I have been going back and forth on whether or not I agree with that.
Because it is cloaking our opinions again. And so I agree with you that I understand what they're saying, that maybe after we've done it for a while, then it'll just turn out, look, the women were on this board and nothing bad happened. So we'll do some confidence. But I kind of think that if you don't eventually rip off the Band-Aid,
I agree
then
with that.
you don't end up getting change.
Yep.
If you have to sneak women into these scenarios, it doesn't do any good, and it doesn't encourage the other people it doesn't encourage more women to go, well, no, you can invest, and it does, change. It may change the mission. Who knows?
They're talking about the difference between gender diversity and cognitive diversity, because they're saying diversity advocates argue that gender diverse boards make better decisions than all male boards because the women are bringing new insights and perspectives and increase the cognitive diversity of the board. The greater the cognitive diversity, the better the board is at solving complex problems and coming up with novel solutions. The problem here is that there's scant evidence that the women directors are much different from the men when it comes to their approach or experiences, particularly if they have the similar education and professional backgrounds. Because, and I know this, when they're looking for new board members, people look for new board members within their own network, right?
Right.
So broadening the definition of diversity without associated efforts to reduce bias in director selection efforts could provide firms with an out, effectively allowed them to exclude unrepresented demographics or minorities on the boards, right?
Right.
So shift the diversity discourse away from gender to other dimensions of expertise and experience. It might actually help women and other unrepresented groups.
Right.
So instead of saying we have appointed a female director, you could say we have appointed an expert on China. Like look for people that or just saying we want somebody from a totally different country on this board, or we don't have any lawyers on the board. We need a lawyer on this board. Mm-hmm. Or we need somebody with completely different experience that's not in our network, that's from a completely different group and background. Like it's cognitive diversity and diversity too. So part of the problem is, maybe they're checking off a gender box, but they're not really still going that far out of their network or their experience.
I think that we need both. I think all of those things are things that we should be working on as well. But I do think that in a lot of these frameworks, I don't like the part that then minimizes women as a group as well. Right. And so I think that that's what we end up in a lot, is that we end up in this catch-22 scenario where we don't want to only get the job because we are the woman we want. We're saying and shouting that we are quite often the most qualified.
Right.
But if we don't showcase that the most qualified was also a woman, it does not open doors.
Right.
So I think that,
but I think that's what the researchers meant by saying it's not just a woman, it's this. It's the idea of cognitive diversity along with real diversity, and not just saying, oh, well, I know this woman because I worked with her, or maybe we should get my sister, or do you know what I mean? Like using that same... Because I know people on boards and it's all their friends. You know, I mean, if it's a nonprofit board or something, and I'm not saying it's always that, but a lot of times it is. They just put together their own network.
Yeah. And
it's so commonly that.
Yep. And I think if companies go the route of focusing overly on the qualifications and minimizing gender, it's getting back to that old question of who are we asking to change their behavior, right? And if we were asking in this case, the investors to change their perspective and change their behavior, then they need to be, again, just using women as the example of diversity, then that needs to be something that they hear about a lot,
right?
Because then it just becomes, it normalizes it, and it
Correct.
becomes a source of strength,
right?
A source of strength. In addition to the person's qualifications.
So I think that I'm glad that this particular study came out there, because we do have to keep showcasing that there's a bias. And because if you don't have a study that, if you don't have numbers behind any of these things, you only have anecdotal information that says, I believe there's a bias. You can't just say that from an anecdotal perspective. Like, you have to be able to say it with numbers to say, okay, so the fact that their research went far enough to go, not only can we acknowledge there's a bias, we can acknowledge that bias is not based in reality. It's based upon emotion. And then that hopefully I think will eventually be what also helps affect change, is because the investors will go, look, the numbers say that this is a safe bet, that it still works, so that they can't sit there and go, oh, no, things become less profitable. That's the emotion that they're using. Yeah. So we can combat that with the research now.
Yeah.
So, Sam, stay in your research lane.
Okay.
You need your numbers. That's the way that it works. I would like to just go, you guys are, you're wrong, but I can't be wrong without somebody like you that can actually come up with the analytics. Got to think.
Yeah, no, it's a super interesting story, and, it's still issues with boards. They're trying to get better, but it's going to be a long road, and...
So just, I have been using Elvest for a while, and I do find them interesting. They are one of the things last year that I started.
Using what?
Elvest. Elvest is, one of the ways that I choose to.
Yes.
I added in 2 different investment strategies into my little mix, and I don't put a lot of money in either of them. So there's Elvest, and then there's one called, I forgot what the other one's called. But there's 2 of them that I thought were, for me, when I was like, okay, I'm going to use these particular products to invest some of my money, because I found them both they were like things, little ads that followed me around. And so Elvest, Elvest I actually found in Bumble, the dating app. And so it was an ad that was placed in Bumble that said, hey, you should give us a shot. And I was like, well, yes, Elvest. And it was a day where I was not feeling any of the people that Bumble was matching me with. So this was the best offer I got.
You paired up with something else.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, I'm going to put some money in this one. But I do think it's also interesting because it's another one that works through it. It's an app-based thing. And I do find the concept of investing, gamifying your investment, I do think it works quite often for a lot of people who are like me, where you live in this digital world and live in this mobile world. So be able to say, yeah, I pulled up this app and it sends me things. so far so good. Like they haven't like tanked my money yet, kind of thing. And it does give you an entry level into learning about these things. And I think that that's good for women too, is going, here's a non-judgy place for you to go. Yeah. When I see the little stock ticker go across when I'm watching, CNN Business or one of those things, I don't know what it means. Well, here's a way for you to learn and not feel like you're in the weeds. So
that's another great topic we should delve into sometime.
Yeah. I would think investing. I think that would be really fun. I'm like, it's something that I'm like, hey man, don't be scared, jump in. We're all living longer. You got to figure out how you're going to keep your money, right? Right. Talking about living longer, let's go actually into, does this make me old? Our next segment here. So Judy, you've been watching The Mandalorian on Disney Plus, right? As so many people are out there doing. And so it seemed like one of those shows that everybody was watching, but we know everybody is not watching. Like, no. Samantha, are you watching The Mandalorian?
I have not yet watched it. I'm going to because of you guys.
So because we're geeks anyway, so we were like, I'm always into Star Wars, so it was one of the things that when we're going to have so many streaming services, The Mandalorian, we kind of weren't sure what we were going to get. When Disney Plus was saying, you can come here, it's going to be the Star Wars Western style thing. What is it going to be? There was all this this chatter about, is it going to be a Boba Fett origin story, all these other things. And The Mandalorian is one of those shows that actually has been encouraging people to get on Disney Plus, because I feel like a lot of the reviews are that it's so much better than we thought it was going to be. It's actually a very quality show. And
it's really good.
Yeah. And so one of the most recent things, the revelations in The Mandalorian, was what, Judy?
Well, I mean, this caught my attention to talk about on the show because I am in I'm on Twitter all the time. I'm super into Star Wars. I got first introduced when the first Star Wars movie came out. I went to it and I've been like way into it ever since. But there was a story, again on BuzzFeed, don't at me, that Laura Dern didn't know what Baby Yoda was.
Do you want me to play the clip?
Yeah, go ahead. Play this clip.
So this was on Variety magazine's Twitter feed. And so she's on this red carpet and a reporter walks up and asks her about Baby Yoda.
Have you seen Baby Yoda?
Yes, I did.
What do you think about Baby Yoda?
Just today.
What do you think of it?
I don't
know if it's a him or a he or she.
I don't know, but I think he was at a basketball game. That's all I'm going to say. That I think I saw him at a basketball game.
Okay.
He was in PA.
I don't know. I think
this is what we've been talking about.
I think she's confused.
Because we've watched this clip numerous times, and we go back and forth. And so we were trying to decide, do we think that Laura Dern is confused, or is Laura Dern trying to be funny to another guy who's not funny? Was she clowning him? Because she's like, that's a dumb question.
I'm going to move on because I have lots of Baby Yoda stuff to talk about, but I don't think she knew what a Baby Yoda was. And then Jennifer Lopez was also asked about Baby Yoda.
But she actually admitted that she
doesn't know what a Baby Yoda is. I'm just getting to the point that this is why I wanted to talk about this as a public service announcement for... I know that there's women my age and there's even more women that are millennials that are not Star Wars people. I don't know how that happened. I guess you didn't have brothers or a dad that took you along to the Star Wars and you don't live in the world where the Star Wars are real.
That was the first movie that I ever went to. My mother took me when I was 6.
There you go. I just mean you weren't exposed at peak age to the Star Wars and you don't have the J-Lo
you don't
apparently.
have the background. J-Lo, but she eventually caught up.
She was like, I love Baby Yoda, whatever. She figured if they're asking about her, she better do it. But either way, it's come to my attention that there are women who watch the show that might not know what a Baby Yoda is if Laura Dern and Jennifer Lopez can't. So this is what I'm doing. So Baby Yoda is basically, it can't be Yoda because the real Yoda died in the Return of the Jedi in 1983. That was when Yoda died. So baby Yoda can't actually be Yoda, but it's a baby of whatever species Yoda is. But we all call it baby Yoda because we don't know what Yoda is, and it's a baby of Yoda. So that's what baby Yoda is. And it's in the show The Mandalorian, which is on Disney Plus, as Shannan said. And it is adorable. And it's really great that it came to be because apparently, so the original Yoda in all the 3 Star Wars
movies, one of the most beloved characters of all of the Star Wars things.
Was created by Jim Henson. It's a Muppet puppet, but it looks great. But
all of those old school Jim Henson puppets and those things.
The new Baby Yoda is also a puppet too. So now Werner Herzog is a documentary maker. He's made